WesWes Show.
But just moving forward, I just wanted to have a brief look. We won't go into too much depth because we've gone a bit over time analysing the All Blacks there. But Australia, they suffered their second loss to Argentina in a pretty close game, 34-31. So I'm not sure if anyone caught that. But it felt like it was a bit of a lower quality game than the All Blacks South Africa game. But Joey, mate, did you catch any of that one? And have you got any thoughts on any of that?
On the
Australia lost to Argentina, which was after the All Blacks game. I'm not sure if you caught much of it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't catch that much of it. I just got the highlights, but I kind of used the opportunity to troll all my friends and family who are Australians.
Nice.
Especially with regard to, Argentina coming off a loss to the All Blacks and then beating Australia the way they did, and that's Australia coming off a heavy loss to South Africa B, if you like.
Right.
And it's any chance I can get to troll my friends and family, I do. And so that's what I used that scoreline to do for me. Other than that, I didn't really care to watch it.
Yep. Yeah, no, I thought it was a lower quality game. Lee Nikitau, he's been good for them. He picked up an injury, so he's ruled out for the rest of the Rugby Championship. So they will be looking for a new centre. But one thing I did want to bring up, so I'm going to take you boys all the way back to one of our first podcasts, way back when we first started, way back in 2020, where we made the earliest of predictions and tried to predict this year's World Cup. Now,
Yes.
Joey, I believe you picked Australia.
I did, and I stick with
Are you
it.
considering everything? No, you're gonna see it out.
I'm seeing it out. I made a bet. I've got the bet at the TAB still.
Oh, nice.
So,
One thing I will say, just on it.
You probably have better odds now than you did then.
yeah, I'll probably have another look at it and put more money on it.
Yeah.
No, I still believe they can do it. Like, even Eddie believes it. Like, if you go back to when Eddie was the only guy who believed Japan could beat South Africa, they made a movie about it recently. That Eddie, he took
Tim
a few
Werner
years.
Morrison.
Yeah, he actually a few years. He called it out a few years before the actual event. He said, "Look, we were aiming for that one game, and that one game came to be reality, where they beat them, and it was a Māori boy who scored the winning try, but that's irrelevant, right?" So Eddie, he has this huge belief, and I know that when he makes these claims, and it seems like when he has naysayers and people who just laugh at him, like the Japanese media did that day when he made that claim, he seems to use that energy in a way that he can then draw upon all the personnel he can, all the help he can, all his smarts, his rugby smarts, and he is a genius in rugby, whether you like him or not, and tends to bring a result. And I think he could do the same with Australia. Everyone's laughing at him now because of their losses, but he could turn it around. He's got a good enough core in terms of players. He just needs to make the right selections in the right places, and they need to fire at the right time. Obviously, they're not firing right now, but they've got some time. They've got some time till the World Cup. Maybe not as good as the rest of the world in terms of international teams that are looking to win it. But I think Eddie may be onto something again. He may prove a lot of people wrong again. So I'm sticking with it.
Yeah. Nice. One thing I will say, because Eddie also predicted when he was England coach that they would beat the All Blacks at that 2019 World Cup, which also came to pass. So maybe you might be onto something there. And one thing I will say about Australia when we're looking forward to the World Cup, the top 5 teams in the world, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why this has happened, based on the rankings, are all on the other side of the draw. So a team like Australia, they could potentially get to the final or to the semi-finals, or maybe to the final, without playing anyone really good. And once you get to the final, you could potentially, anything's possible from there. So I'm not dismissing that. I'll give them a definitely shout out for sure. But Rog, way back in 2020, I'm not sure if you remember this, but you picked France way back then to take up the World Cup. So
they're the favourites.
are you sticking with that? I know that you've had a lot of love for Fozzie
Yeah.
And the ABs have looked bloody good. So
Yeah, I'll
are you
qualify
sticking
that.
with
I'll qualify it.
France?
So I'm still hoping that on the basis that it's home nation advantage hosting France, and I think it's because they've been the maiden, a couple of times already, and I think they're due a World Cup triumph, and so that was the basis of that. The only reason why I'm showing a bit of aroha for Fozzie is that that's the swan song. This is his legacy now. Is that regardless of all of his lackluster coaching career to this point, this will determine his legacy in All Blacks rugby or All Blacks history. So I think he's got nothing to lose. Like you say, so he's trying to select the best players that are available to him. But so, yep, I believe France, probably, especially last year, they were, firing power to probably take it with a hiss and a roar. But I have a sort of a quiet confidence about the All Blacks doing the job with the extra motivation of being Ian Foster's swan song out of his All Black tenure. But just quietly, I believe I'm quietly hoping the All Blacks do it. But it's going to be a tough one it'll be France's World Cup to lose, I believe. But then looking at that World Cup pool and then Australia having the pool that they're in to get out of there, really the only ones that will probably we don't know. Georgia's a bit of a dark horse. You've got Fiji, Wales that Australia have to get past, Georgia, and then Portugal. So we've seen Georgia develop over the last wee while.
Is Milton still there?
You're not scared of that pool. You're not thinking to yourself, this is a pool.
So
this is a tough
Australia, given their history, they should get out. They should get out of that pool.
They should win that pool.
They should get out of that. Yeah, or they could even win it. It depends on what kind of whales we've got. Have we got traditional faux whale or
I think my man is he's
been
retired.
He's been retired for it. So
they're dropping down.
But then, does Pool C meet Pool D? Does it? Is that what you mean by the other side of the?
Yeah, Pool C meets Pool D.
Yeah. So then, in Pool D, you've got the likes of England, Argentina, Samoa, and then you got Japan and Chile.
So, how many Test caps did old mate end up on?
Who?
Before he retired.
Who's that?
That legend from Wales.
Alan Jones, he got over 150 when I stopped losing
He's the most capped.
So,
he's the most capped.
I don't know how much he got in the end, but yeah, it was over 150. He was.
That's including his British and Irish.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So I think he's.
They include that.
Yeah, international cap.
I see.
But for Wales, for One Nation, does he eclipse Richie McCaw?
Yeah, he got 158 for Wales, 12 for the British and Irish Lions.
Oh, wow. Look at that. So he's 170.
Lock of the decade, OBE.
170. So he's played 170 internationals.
170. Yeah, amazing. From one of the all-time greats. But yeah, just to back you up a bit there, Rog. France. They're looking good playing at home, but they've got
they've had a few slip-ups, though.
Young players.
They've had a few slip-ups in recent times towards in the Six Nations, So
yeah.
So I'm not as confident as I was before. I'm sort of more. I'm probably leaning more towards the All Blacks taking this out, but I'm always a quiet supporter of the Le Bleu. Maybe not quiet supporter, but an avid fan.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add, France beat Ireland to win the under-20s, the World Under-20s this year, and they also won it in 2018 and 2019. So they've got some good kids coming through. So as good as they are right now, I think they'll potentially be better at the 2027 World Cup, which is scary for Robertson and whoever else is trying to get them on, because I think that they could, if they win this one, I'm going to make another early call. I think they could go back-to-back World Cups. That's how good their juniors are and their development systems. So they've won the last 3 under-20s World Cups. So yeah,
And then there would be another Tuilangi rampaging
that's right.
across
That's right.
in Le Bleu.
That's right. But if when the World Cup comes, I actually quite like both of you. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the final or close to it. France versus the Wallabies. So if that happens, I'm going to try and dig up that old footage, put it on our
I
thing
don't know
account,
about
and say,
Australia
hey,
though. Yeah, it depends on which side of the. Yeah, if they finish first, then they'll potentially be playing at Argentina, Samoa, Japan.
well, I mean, come
If
on.
they finish first, if they finish second, then they'll be playing in England in the quarterfinals.
I think it's also a matter of what strategy Eddie has, because Eddie,
Oh, they're conniving,
he was
man.
able to, get a Japanese team of unknowns to beat a world-class team like South Africa. And he beat them through their
Yeah,
training regime. He made
but
them
that's
the
for a
fittest
moment
team
in time because where has Japan rugby gone from then? Where
since
has it
Eddie
gone?
left, right? Since Eddie
Yeah,
left.
yeah, yeah.
And that's
Because
not
what?
to say
How has it
take anything
benefited
away from the
Japanese
coaches.
rugby? Not taking anything away from what Eddie did and for all those accomplishments, getting to quarterfinals. But where has it taken? Have they progressed further or have they taken a backward step in
Yeah, but
terms of?
that's not what we're looking at. It's sort of like how are you going to perform at the World Cup? And
Yeah,
Eddie
yeah, no,
Jones, he overachieved with Japan, and I
yeah.
think he overachieved with England as well at that 2019. I don't think they were that good that they were the second best team in the world. I don't think they were up there. So he's overachieved at 2 World Cups, and he could overachieve again. If he overachieves with Australia, they could bumble their way to the final potentially.
Hey, teams have
That's
done
how
it.
easy the
Teams have
draw is.
bumbled their way to the final.
South Africa did it.
A la France in 2011.
Right. And I think Eddie, his record in World Cups stacks up, in terms of overachieving with teams in it. So I think he could get it done. But yeah, like I mentioned, if it's not that far fetched that it could be a France Australia final,
Ooh,
and I will try to dig up that old footage and put that on our page and be like, yo, look what we predicted 3 years out before everyone else knew.
Okay. Just going back to everything that we've covered in this particular episode, you guys have just brought up a pretty good point, actually. And, the focus of our conversation thus far in the last few minutes has been about Eddie, right? And it made me think about the most hard done by coach in world rugby, I believe, at the moment, even still. And that's Dave Rennie, right? Dave Rennie lost out to an Eddie Jones golden handshake. Come back home, Eddie, because we need you because you're an Aussie. And we need to get this Kiwi out for whatever reason, even though this Kiwi seems to be doing a good enough job. And he's got, some results behind him. And he's got, the backing of a couple of super rugby titles that he got with the Chiefs, where he also was hard done by not getting higher honours with the All Blacks, and his assistant coach got the higher honours instead because he got to go on and be an assistant and make his way through the old boys assistant route. And, I think Dave Rennie has been the most hard done by coach. And I don't know if there's any other coach out there right now that has had a harder road to international glory than he has. And he did get the international glory with Australia, but they fucking did him in the eye.
Hmm.
so where to from here for Rennie? Where does he go? Does he come back to Super Rugby? Does he go abroad into Northern Hemisphere? Because we've got Vern Cotter that's now taken up the coaching role at the Blues.
Yeah.
Can Rennie be reintroduced into somewhere into Super Rugby in order to then claim a sort of a potential run at the All Blacks post
If I was
Robertson?
Rennie, I'd go to the Canes or the Highlanders.
Mm.
And the reason being is because, well,
What's
he's
stopping him from
originally
going back to the Chiefs?
he's originally a Wellingtonian, isn't he?
He played for Wanganui. Yeah.
So yeah, he was in that setup with Wellington, so he's from down those ways and he knows it well. But also, he's had some coaching partnerships with Vern Cotter, who I also think is a great coach. technically, and he's just old school mentality that the Blues will need. And I think he will make a real difference. Not saying that Rangi didn't, because Rangi did make a difference over that 5 years that he gave himself. And well done to him for getting the higher honours and getting selected by Razor as one of his right-hand men. But I also think, look, Rangi had a chance to beat his former teammate. And unfortunately, the better ropey brain won, which is, Razor. Razor, I think, is underrated in that sense, but we will soon see how he looks like in the international scene when he takes on the All Blacks in 2024 after the Fozzie show. And hopefully, like you say, Rog, I too hope that Fozzie goes out as a World Cup winner. That's not just for his own sake, but for fucking New Zealand. We all want to see that cup back here, right?
Yeah,
whether it's Fozzie that is the coach behind it
and
or not.
I'll take that over my prediction of France winning. I'll have some sort of triumph in Foster having a bit of glory before he exits the coaching arena of the All Blacks. Only because, and that's selfish of me.
Mate, that's the only way he can salvage his time in the All Blacks
I
coaching.
I don't think it's salvageable.
Whoa, but see,
listen to the unforgiving crowd over here.
Doesn't matter whether he puts his right shoe on his left foot or his left shoe on the right foot. It doesn't matter what Foster does. You're going to have these naysayers, similar to Stacey Terianu, that it doesn't. He can't even buy a tip. He breathes. He's going to be criticised for breathing.
Honestly, the best value that an All Blacks coach can have is during World Cup year. I don't think those years in between matter so much.
So you imagine
as long as you win the World Cup.
Look at how we forgave Stephen Donald for his iniquities as a player. That one penalty kick made all the difference.
Honestly, if I was Stephen Donald, I would, every time I see Piri Wepu, fucking buy him a beer because Piri Wepu got him there.
Yeah. All those endorsements that he got post-rugby life and, now the travelling ambassador work that he gets is off the back of the kick. And so, what happened before that, who cares? He's in Rugby World Cup folklore.
And he's really fucking going to town on that. He's riding that bloody coattail.
Yeah, exactly.
The reason why I say it's unsalvageable, and we talked about this on a previous podcast, where sort of like when the Kiwis won the League World Cup, it wasn't Stephen Kearney coached them to World Cup victory. It was Wayne Bennett, assistant coach, masterminded them to World Cup victory. And if the All Blacks win, it won't be Foster suddenly gave up 3 years of being Gaia and figured it out. It will be Joe Schmidt and Jason Ryan. Them coming on board and bringing their ideas, turn the All Blacks around. So that's why I think it's unsalvageable. Not necessarily because...
It's opinion. That's not fact at all.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's fact or not. It's the same as Kearney. Maybe he was the mastermind that turned the Kiwis around, but he doesn't get the credit.
But the more that you say what you say and you put it out there on these platforms and social media, that's what people will see exposed. They'll be exposed to, and then that formulates an opinion and an ideology. And I believe that's what's happening here.
How do you explain the All Blacks being...
Hey, who knows?
Bumbling along for 3 years and then turning it around.
Stacey,
now.
Not bumbling along. He's had a few losses here and there. Yep. admittedly, look, because the Irish test was a massive one. To lose a test series to Ireland never happened before. But he wasn't the coach at the time when they lost to Ireland before. And we've gone on about this in past pods, is that Steve Hansen was at the helm of the first loss to the Irish. Okay, no one talks about that. They only talk about Ian Foster having lost the series. And so they don't talk about the first loss at Soldier Field that we lost to the Irish. Was it Soldier Field? It was Soldier Field, wasn't it?
Chicago somewhere.
Yep. So, and that was under Hansen. So, is that just the Irish rugby just becoming better? Or was it or was it a bit of both? The All Blacks weren't good on the day. But we talked about how...
He played Ireland 4 times, 1 win, 3 losses. He's got a 25% record against Ireland.
Yeah, and
He's got
two
a
of those
0%,
losses, was just last year.
0% win against France. These are the teams that are on his side of the draw. That's important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So he's going to be in the same pool as France, where he's got a 0% win record.
So it's
if
the
they
way
win, they
you're
might play
wording
Ireland
it. It's the way you're wording
in the quarterfinals.
It's
25%
it's
win
on
record.
his side of the draw. It's the All Blacks side of the draw. The All Blacks are the ones.
But it's his
on the
reputation and it's his legacy on the line, right?
And that's why I believe he's going to go out riding high.
Why?
To be fair, those losses.
We'll see who gets the credit.
To be fair, those losses to Ireland for the first time, and the one where we lost the
Argentina. We lost to Argentina.
The one where we lost the winning streak that we had to Australia and Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Where they fucking ended our winning streak, right? They were neutral grounds. We don't do too well on neutral grounds.
Well, and again, that was a thing before Foster. That was a thing before Foster as well. Okay, we lost to Australia. Again, bringing back Stephen Donald, who was in charge. It wasn't Foster. We don't do too well on neutral grounds unless it's World Cup year. World Cup year is the only time we do well on neutral grounds. Anyway.
We'll see who gets the credit if the All Blacks do well. Because I'm pretty confident that it's going to be Mastermind Joe Schmidt and Jason Ryan. More so.
That's what you want to believe. I understand. That's what you want to believe. You don't want to give Foster any credit whatsoever. I get that. However, long after we're gone, it'll say in the history books that Foster was the head coach and he won a Rugby World Cup. Hopefully that's what happens. It's the head coach, similar to the players. Who was the captain? Who were the players? That was a team that played. We don't dismiss who the head coaches were. We give credit and acknowledge the assistants. But if the head coach for 2023, Ian Foster, can get a win, I believe that'll rewrite the legacy at the moment that a lot of New Zealanders are trying to remember him for.
Yeah. Nice. It's going to be interesting. So we'll definitely keep the content flowing and get some more podcasts pumping out once the World Cup starts as well. But one thing I wanted to look briefly at, because we're going quite a lot over time, the All Blacks 15. I'm not sure if anyone's caught any of their games, but they beat Japan 41-27. So I'm not sure if anyone watched it, but just wondering, Joey, I'll get your words. Are you seeing anyone potentially forcing their way into the All Blacks from that All Blacks 15?
I'm biased, so Etienne and Anaise Toro is one that I would expect to be there or thereabouts at some point, especially when Whanganuku leaves. They'll have to fill that gap somehow, and I'm picking Etienne to have a say in that. But other than Etienne, I think it's a tough one because I haven't really watched the All Blacks 15. Especially that game against the Brave Blossoms. But it does say something about Japan, to your point, Rog, that, what have they developed to be or to become since Eddie Jones' era, right? And unfortunately for the current coaches, is it still Tony Brown and Jamie Joseph?
Yeah.
See, unfortunately for those...
Yeah. I'm not sure. What was the final score for the test? Because the first game wasn't a test. Well, they still said people came on for debuts and that, but I'm thinking because the first game was Japan 15. It was New Zealand 15 versus Japan 15.
Oh,
but
really?
Then the second game was titled Japan versus New Zealand 15.
Ah, okay.
So
I don't know.
Got the Michael Leach, I think, played in both. And there was a handful of guys, but there were some guys that they were exposing to international rugby in that Japanese team. But then what I heard in that first game is that the commentators were saying that as Japanese players, because there was a few Japanese players that came on their first international test. So they were saying it was a debut, but then it was being labelled Japan 15. So I don't know how that becomes a test. But but going back to your question about guys that could bolt or transition across to the All Blacks in Rugby World Cup year, I think you've got to look. You can't sort of look too far past the previous guys that have been All Blacks before. You got Jack Goodhue that it's in there.
Ooh.
Stephen Perofeta, who's got a couple as well. So those guys who've been there and done it, and then Akira Ioane, who we've touched on a little bit as well. So those guys are probably my forerunners to probably potentially get, especially Stephen Perofeta, because we know how he could probably potentially get called in for, as cover in the backs. But then another one that sort of I'm hoping, and then Brad Weber's the other one who's in that
Right.
15. But now we don't know where Stevenson sits because he's in limbo. He hasn't played for the New Zealand 15. He was in the squad, so hopefully he's done enough because now we've got issues with Will Jordan's migraines. But word was that he's just been released by the All Black camp to come back to New Zealand. So that'd be something that we need to sort of monitor as to whether he comes back in. So we know that he's the outside. He was there for cover for Telea. Wasn't even used in these first 2 tests. How will it bode now? Because they've got one more test down in Dunedin, and then that's when and then things start to move offshore after that. So does Stevenson just maintain and keep his fitness? Does he get into the NPC, which is soon to kick off, and then maintain his fitness? And then obviously, if the All Blacks need to call on him, then he'll be at the ready. But I just feel like he's one that should be in the Rugby World Cup. Caleb Clark is now he's realising that his position isn't a shoo-in now. He was benched for that test against. He came off the bench. I think he did pretty good as an impact player. But that'll be interesting to see what the mix-up of the bench is in the next few tests, Rugby Championship, Bledisloe, and then leading up into the warm-up games again for the Rugby World Cup. So, man, could he miss out again?
Potentially. Whainganuku we haven't seen yet, but he was Crusaders Player of the Year.
Yeah.
So, you've got to think that they want to have a look at him. Just on that All Blacks 15, I know Billy Proctor, he scored 4 tries. So, I don't know. I'm with you guys. I don't know if anyone's going to force their way in. But maybe 4 tries, he might come in for McLeod, maybe. But no, I don't really think so. One thing I want to say on that All Blacks 15, Hoskins Satutu. See, I thought he had a good year for the Blues. And he was an All Black tourist on the end of year tour last year. Now he's not even good enough to make the All Blacks 15 squad.
But I think there might be a bit more of a backstory in the background of some of these players that have missed out, including Hoskins Satutu. I don't know. Maybe the All Blacks have already seen enough of him. They know what he's capable of. They want to give guys like Quinton Strange, who's had a bit of a mixed season in terms of injuries. So give him, see what he can do on the international stage against, albeit Japan and the Japan 15. But then Christian Leowili, he had a really good season for the Crusaders. So he's one that I believe. And then, is it a consolation? Duplessis Karifi playing in a New Zealand 15 jersey. What is he anywhere close to becoming a test player for the All Blacks, or would he be better off going across to the Royal Blue of Manu Samoa? I don't know.
I wonder if that Christian Leowere is the son of the great East Coaster, Kele Leowere. The former lock for East Coast Bays when they had that awesome run in grassroots.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. Anyway,
because then you got guys like Xavier Numia. I reckon played well for New Zealand 15. I like him as he's a shorter, smaller, loose head prop for the Hurricanes in Wellington, but is he someone else that's going to be in international wilderness that potentially could go across and play for Samoa, but chasing the black jersey?
What happened to that other bolter from the other year? And then he went missing. He played 1 or 2 tests, and the one with the dreads from the Chiefs, he's a number 8. What's his name again?
Oh, Peter Gasokula.
Yeah, where is he?
He's going to France. So he's in that 15, New Zealand 15. Yeah, he was in.
Did he go all right?
Actually, he was in the squad, All Blacks 15.
Oh, yeah. He's a gun.
Yeah, I suppose I just don't know how Hoskins has fallen so far in such a short time. He was good for the Blues. He had a good year. So if you look across the 2 squads, the All Blacks 15 and the All Blacks, there's 12 loosies that got chosen. I'm not buying that there's 12 Lucy's better than Hoskins to Tutu. He's fallen off a cliff in terms of All Black selection, but his form for the Blues has been good. So I don't know why that happened.
I've
I know.
not. I'm probably not as biased as you, being you being a Blues supporter. And I'm Chiefs, but I just can't see him being. I believe he's a really skillful athlete, but I don't think he provides the go forward or the impetus from the back of the scrum. I reckon he'd be better used as a number 6 as opposed to an 8. Adi Savea, who's a makeshift 8 because he can play 7 or 6. He provides better go forward than Satutu. Satutu runs too wide for my liking. Too wide and not as far forward. But really lanky compared to your other 8s. Like you compare him to a Jacobson. A Jacobson is more hard running, but then you've got Hoskins, who's quite the more athletic, who's looking for a bit of a jink and a step in his movement. Whereas you don't get that flash stuff with Adi Savea, or they just go forward. Every now and then he'll pull out a dummy, but Adi's game is forward, and similar to Jacobson as well. Nothing flash, but they get the meters going forward and the post contact meters as well.
While you're on Lucy's, I just want to touch on Akira. What I've noticed of Akira over the years since he first came onto the professional rugby scene is that he's been, I guess, handbraked by the fact that his off-the-ball work isn't that great compared to his attacking skills. Yep. Obviously, we all know that he's a great ball runner and, he does an odd hit every now and then. But I think that his off-the-ball work is where his game falls down, and I reckon the All Blacks coaches have been keeping a close eye on that. And it was the same. I think it was the same reason why Liam Messam didn't get as many Test matches as he should have. Is the off-the-ball work. When you've got Lucy's who are hanging off the rucks or waiting in the back line to receive the ball, you've got to ask the question, eh? So I think to their detriment, those types of player, the All Blacks coaches, they rather choose, like you say, Rog, the ones with the good go forward off the back of a scrum, got a bit of meat behind them. Maybe that's all that's missing from Old Mate's game, from Satutu's game. So he just needs a bit more meat on him.
Because I think that's where Dalton Papali'i falls in. He's a similar mould, I believe, to what Hoskins provides. So, hey, you can only have so many of that style of a player. And Akira, unfortunately, is in both camps where he can provide the go forward. He can be the flashy stepping loose forward as well as a carrier holding the ball with one hand. So, how many of them can you carry in a squad? Any other international team, those two will be, picked up. For Fiji, Hoskins, easy. For Samoa, Akira, no worries. But how many of those? We've got Riches in the All Black camp, right? We've got Riches right across the country with such great. And then Billy Harmon, Billy Harmon was included in New Zealand 15. So you look at what he's done for the Highlanders, and he's got rave reviews right throughout for his Super Rugby endeavours. So he gets rewarded with that. And there was even talks about him should be over, the likes of Dalton Papali'i or even Sam Cane.
Where's Duplessis?
Duplessis Karifi was involved in the New Zealand 15 as well.
Oh, he was? Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying about Duplessis. I mean, how close or how far away is he from an All Black test? Are they just waving this in front of him just to keep him interested, stick around, and to prevent him from going across to the Royal Blue?
I think so.
Absolutely.
I think so, because I also think that Tom Christie's better than Duplessis Karifi.
Yeah.
So I would have taken Christie before Karifi.
There you go. Another one, Tom Christie, who misses out. So we've got such a wealth of riches in terms of players, and New Zealand have always had that wealth, and it's always a matter of, it's not the ones that get chosen, it's the ones that miss out. It's a matter of who misses out, because all these guys could provide so much dynamism for the All Blacks at an international stage. I don't think you lose much in a Tom Christie. I don't think I'll even throw in, and I'll probably be a little bit biased here, a Nick Choate. Adrian Choate. And
Here's
the way that he's come in leaps and bounds for the Auckland NPC and then into Super Rugby, and he held his own while they had the international players. Dalton Papali wasn't available. He came into his own and he forced a lot of players that probably should have been above him to be benched while he sort of, did what he did for the Blues. And so I think he's a bit of an unsung hero for the Blues in terms of loose forwards, because you got the ones like Dalton Papali'i and Hoskins Satutu Akira Wane, who he has to play around, but he's been able to forge his own Super Rugby career in and around these All Blacks.
Here's a question for you guys to ponder. How many Blues players who are signed to the Blues this year and for next year will be wanting or will be licking their lips or wishing even that they followed Tana to Moana?
Well, we don't know what, things could happen. Things could still happen. Because whatever happened and caused the movement, whether it was, with what happened for Dalton Papali'i, Hoskins Satutu to go to Counties Manukau, as opposed to Auckland. Something happened there to cause that transition. So,
and it was at the same time as what's his name? The coach.
You had Filo Tiatia involved in
Filo
Auckland.
Tiatia.
So would they go across to Moana because Filo's still there, or is he? I know Tana's head coach. Is Filo assistant still?
Was that a factor? That is the question I have. Was that a factor?
Filo, he was in and around that. I mean, who else? It would be Filo or Alama Yeremia.
Yeah, where is Alama?
He's not coaching at all, because now Craig McGrath is head coach for Auckland.
That's interesting. It's interesting that they brought Vern Cotter in and passed up on someone like Alama, who's done the hard yards,
that's the
right?
thing. But what determines hard yards? Because you got Craig McGrath, who was an assistant for the Blues, and now is he still going to be an assistant under Vern Cotter? Vern Cotter might want to bring in his own charges.
I mean, I'm a fan of Vern Cotter, and I think he's great for the franchise.
Me too.
At the same time, I just wonder, what is Alama's future? Does he just quit and go and focus on other areas of life, or what?
Well, I haven't heard any updates about what his.
He's gone to the US. That's right. He's got a contract in the USA.
MLR. Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's right.
Oh, there you go.
That's right.
Nice.
Sorry, guys.
I
totally forgot about that one. I didn't know. Like, who's going to win the World Cup? Australia, right?
Yeah. Nice thoughts there, boys. That was quite a comprehensive review of the international game, but I thought while I've got you two on the podcast, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to preview the Auckland Club Rugby Final this weekend. Given you guys' contribution to that level of the game, I know. Well, we know for a fact it will be the Manukau Rovers looking for back-to-back wins against University. Now, in my notes, I've put it would be good for the Rovers to get a bit of support from out south, with the final being played at Papatui. But then a little birdie told me in our chat that it's been moved to Waitemata. So, Rog, mate, why did you guys steal the final from us South boys?
I'd just like to say, we never stole a final or the hosting rights from anybody. I do feel for the Papatui rugby community, because it was advertised and promoted to be hosted at Papatui on social media and whatever other platforms. So the announcements were made. And I don't know whether that was because it was ill-advised or that was jumping ahead, whether it came through Auckland Rugby. I just saw a post on social media which got shared around. And so we settled on that. We thought, okay, Papatui. The only reason why it's gone to community level, and then, Joey, you you commented on it, saying it's awesome that Auckland Rugby have considered bringing it back to, because traditionally, Gallagher Shield at least is always played at Eden Park, but because of the women's FIFA World Cup football that's been hosted between
Soccer?
Australia and New Zealand, soccer football, Eden Park has now been kitted out with FIFA apparel and FIFA memorabilia and sponsorship posters and placards everywhere. It doesn't look like a rugby stadium because
Right.
of the sponsorship right. So that's why Eden Park is out of the question for this. Obviously, I don't know whether Auckland Rugby could have adjusted that, but the season started when it started, and it's brought us to this point in time where this weekend, coinciding with the opening matches of the Football World Cup, it's unavailable. Hence, South Africa and All Blacks in the weekend gone just played at Mount Smart Go Media Stadium. So it was initially announced to be at Papatoi. A few weeks ago, I heard murmurings that some people in community rugby were unhappy, and so complaints per se were then put forward to Auckland Rugby in trying to change the grounds. What I hear in the last week, and that's as far as, not only clubs, not only teams, but, as deep as coaches and players putting forward some complaints of discontent that Papatoi's rugby fields are not up to standard for the type of rugby that they're wanting to display, or even sort of gives them a good chance of putting their best foot forward in order to contend for a Gala Shield or a Jubilee Shield as well. Jubilee Cup, sorry, which is the fifth and sixth. No, sorry, how did I say that? Yes, fifth and sixth place final, which is in the Premiership and Premier Rugby. So that's also going to be played and hosted at under 21s football, and then you've got the bowl Premier teams as well playing it out for the bottom four, and that's going to be between Waitemata and Otahuhu. It's another shout out for another South Auckland, and Papatoa versus Suburbs in the Jubilee, and then obviously the Gala Shield's going to be between Manukau Rovers and University, and then the Prem Development, or also known as the Reserves, Waitemata versus Manukau Rovers. So Manukau are in a double header there, and those will be played on the number one at Waitemata Park. But it was only because of the contentious issue of the fields not being up to standard. And so, again, someone sort of overshot before they've confirmed things, and that's why it seems like the Papatoi community, rugby community, have seemed to be sort of underhanded here in terms of losing the rights to host the finals weekend. Waitemata, however, has come to the party because they're the only other, well, I believe, my opinion is that they're the only other, one of the few, if not the only club that own their own grounds. Auckland Rugby have approached Waitemata, therefore, for it to be hosted. Yes, there's a little bit of conjecture in terms of the field, the number one field at Waitemata, because it has a bit of a slope and a bit of a hill or a mound, as Joey, you'd know. So you sit on one side of the field on the long edge, and you look across to the other, and then you won't be able to see the other side because there's a bit of a rise in the middle of the field. But it's the number one field at Waitemata Park, and that's where the Prem Development final as well as the Gallagher final will be played at 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock respectively. However, again, even though they've already announced that all of the 5 matches are going to be housed at Waitemata Park, there's still confirmation to be had for the Jubilee Cup, with the Suburbs, who are just down the road anyway in Blockhouse Bay, just to host the game there, because the number 2, number 3 fields might not be up to scratch anyway at Waitemata Park.
Mate,
so
come on.
and that, I think that just brings about, I mean, we saw in the under-20s World Cup, who would have thought that this generation would experience muddy fields in South Africa where they are. But I think wet weather has caused a lot of the fields to be damp underfoot, and so it doesn't matter where you go. It's probably going to be, But that's what I heard even as recent as tonight, Tuesday night, that number 2, number 3 fields are going to be mud baths if you have 3 other matches there. So 5 matches in total. You may as well take the Jubilee Cup, which is between Papatoetoe and Suburbs, to Shadbolt Park, which is in Blockhouse Bay down the road. And that, but the only unfair, I don't know where it would have been played if Eden Park would have been available. I can't remember the last time a Jubilee Cup was played at Eden Park. I know as 2000 was the last time that Waitakere played for the Jubilee Cup, and that was at Eden Park. But I don't know if they continued that tradition or whether they finished it, and that the Jubilee Cup should just be played at the highest ranked of the final teams. So that would mean it should go to Suburbs, which is at Shadbolt Park. And then Otahu and Waitemata are playing out for the bowl. So potentially they end up playing at number 2 or number 3 at Waitemata Park. Under 21s, again, number 2 and number 3. I can't recall who's playing in that final for the 21s, but yeah. So it's going to be a busy weekend at Waitemata Park, but again, there's a few things up in the air, but it was just a lot of, it was I think it was feedback and / complaints that went through once it was finalised that it had been confirmed over social media at least, that it was going to be held at Papatoetoe due to the unavailability of Eden Park. That was a lot long-winded than I thought.
Yeah. I heard similar to what you just described after talking to a few rugby heads in the Papatoetoe circles as early as last Thursday evening when I was in Auckland, because I was asking around what the fuck happened to Papatoetoe hosting the grand final, the Gala Shield final, and unfortunately, it seems like Auckland Rugby have got off scot-free without being blamed for all of this shenanigans and debacle. Auckland Rugby basically said to Papatoetoe, there you go, you guys are the hosts, deal with it. Without even checking if they had the grounds to be able to host those 5 games you mentioned, Rog, and checking with the council if they have permits. So apparently you need permits to be able to do that kind of thing and hold that kind of crowd. And unfortunately, Papatoetoe don't have the permits, nor were they going to get the permits, which is accurate to what you said. So they looked for another club, and before they got to Waitemata as their chosen venue location, they looked at other clubs in Auckland and to see who could host it. And naturally, they would have gone with Western Springs if Western Springs was still available. But as it happens, the flooding that happened earlier this year caused some major damage, and Ponsonby Rugby Club as a club can't do anything, let alone host a grand final for Gala Shield.
That's right. So they've been playing out of Cocktail Bay all season, so they haven't even had a home game yet.
So Waitemata is the rugby club that I thought Rog had a hand in, and I still think he had a hand in. I still think he was able to pull some strings there at Auckland Rugby to get that as the ground. But it's not a bad ground. It's got a good grandstand. Even though with that mound, it's still a good ground and a memorable day out with the family, because Waitemata, for all my knowledge and experience over the years, I've never come away from that place thinking, yeah, that was boring. I've always come away thinking, fuck, there was still some good support there, whether it was all for Waitemata or, opposing teams. I always came away thinking, shit, yeah, and Roger's gone. Shit, yeah, that was a good experience. It was a family-friendly experience. So I'm guessing his internet probably ran out.
His data ran out again.
He's saving the data for the final at his rugby club.
Mm.
But yeah, that was what I heard. I heard that the permits couldn't be produced, so they looked at other options, and unfortunately, they didn't look at other options in South Auckland,
Yeah, I
like
know.
Manukau Rovers,
Yeah, well, I don't know about. I would have loved it, but I think that
Williamson
the
Park.
Rovers would have won it quite comfortably at their home ground.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Or even
well,
Sturgis. Otahu.
yeah, yeah. Oh, like you
I don't
say,
know.
Waitemata, they've got decent facilities. So that's not the bad thing. But I'm with you. Auckland Rugby have bumbled this, and they've got off scot-free. Everyone's questioning, what happened? How did come these guys got and all the rest of it?
Yeah.
Well, Auckland Rugby should have sorted this stuff out. It's on them. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. Mate, well, have you got a prediction for that final? We're just about to wrap up, but have you got any predictions on how you think the final's going to go?
Oh, mate, look, I'm going to go on history, right? Recent history says Manukau Rovers now have a grand final under their belt, as recent as last year.
Yep.
So they're the incumbents. So obviously, the attitude is always going to be the shield is there to win, even though you're the incumbent. There was always the attitude of when I was playing at Ponsonby Rugby, whenever we held the shield, we didn't go there to defend it. We went there to win it again, right? That was always the attitude, whether we had it or not. And I think Rovers have the same attitude. They're going to win it rather than defend it. And, I think they will want it more than Varsity will want it. Even though it's been a long time between drinks for Varsity since they've last had the championship. At the same time, I don't think Rovers will give it up so easily, and they'll have a proper game plan, a la last year, and care of Doug Samft, the great De La Salle man. And I think it's just even on going on Varsity's history, university's history. When they've played in a semi-final and beaten Ponsonby, which I've been involved in a couple, where they've beaten us in a semi-final, and it's one of the hardest pills to swallow, especially over the summer period. You've got that rock under your tail that you're always thinking about. It's causing some pain in your back, but not that kind of pain. More the emotional pain than anything over the summer period. Varsity, when they've beaten Ponsonby in a semi-final, they've not gone on to win it.
Okay.
So
wow.
I think history will repeat in that sense as well. So I'm going with history. History is a huge predictor of the future, and that's kind of different words, but same as what Mr. Hitler once said. If you want to predict the future, look at the history.
Yep.
And that's basically what's going to happen. I think is Rovers will do the double. They'll go back to back, and they will have the support. No matter what club you have it at, Waitemata will be filled with Manukau Rovers supporters, and you will hear them just like we did last year at Eden Park. We heard them full force. So, yep, Rovers again. Fozzie Bear's back.
Rog, mate, we're just getting some predictions for the final.
How's your keel?
Joey's giving us...
My battery went down to 6% and it keep it, so I had to go make sure it was plugged in. Sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry, Rog, we're just getting some predictions on the Club Rugby final. So Joey's just given his thoughts. He's jumping on the Rovers to go back to back. What you got any thoughts on how the final's going to go?
Yeah, I've got my support behind Rovers as well in the Gallagher Shield final. If they can go back to back, that'd be awesome for the Manukau community and also for the South Auckland clubs, because they're propping up teams like Papatoetoe, who in their own right have done really well to get to the Jubilee Cup final, so they can finish as high as 5th. And I think they snuck in there at 8th in the top 8. They just got in there and they pipped Waitemata, who finished 9th in the end, and so. They could go home with some silver, but a well fought season for them coming in, and they could finish as high as 5th. So if you got a couple of South Auckland teams in the top five there.
Mm.
Bodes well because for so long there's been teams such as the college rifles, universities, Pakurangas, East Auckland teams, as well as Central Auckland. But then you got Ponsonby who missed out on a close. I'm not sure if it was a close semi-final against Varsity on the weekend, but they were just pipped there in the end, and both reserves as well as the Prem's finals, semi-finals. So unfortunate for the Ponsonby club because they've got a long-standing history with making it to the big dance. So all the best to Varsity, but I believe Rovers, and you've got a small affiliation there through Desiree and her whānau Stace,
Yep.
so they'll be rooting. And if there's anything to go by the crowd that turned up at Eden Park last year, I think Waitemata Park is going to be in for a bit of a few busloads coming from the southern parts of the Auckland rugby region, and they'll be in full noise at Waitemata Park, no doubt, for back-to-back matches, finals on the number one field at Waitemata Park. So looking forward to it. We'll hope to sort of silence them before the Gallagher Shield match by beating Manukau in the reserves final.
Oh, wow.
And then the big dance between Varsity but Varsity are going to be no slouches. They've been there many a times as well. They've won a number of Gallagher Shields, but Manukau, who only won their first one last year, would be an awesome feat for them to go back to back and to say to Auckland Rugby, hey, you can include some of these boys in the NPC coming up later on this year,
Yes.
if not included already in some of the wider training squads leading up to the NPC, which should kick off in and around August. But it'll just do good for propping up South Auckland rugby as well. So, because unfortunately ET folded earlier this year. Marist being they're an Eastern club, but they house a lot of guys from South Auckland that come through there. But
What do you mean they folded?
they didn't. They ended up being losing by default because they didn't have a team.
Oh no!
So and you got East Tamaki that started as well. The first couple of games in the year they were there, but then they weren't there for the majority of the season. So that became a bye week for a lot of the teams that hadn't played ET. But yeah, Marist they went missing. Not too sure what happened there. So, which is unfortunate because that's got a lot of history with Auckland rugby, and a lot of All Blacks have come through from there. JK, Bernie McGahill, to name a couple, and then the most recent being Hosking, Satutu.
Yep.
So it's an interesting time in Auckland rugby, but there's a lot of movement. But then in Eden they struggled after they won a Gallagher a couple of seasons ago, but Manukau are the new sort of darlings of Auckland rugby, being able to get to two finals now. So wish them all the best, but at the end of the day, finals footy can be, as we saw with Super Rugby, you might, and Manukau finished on top of the Gala Shield, Premier competition this year. So it'll be interesting to see if they can go on and do the back-to-back, and then but it'll be a good day out, like you say, Joey. But I think going back to the point about where it should have been hosted, like Western Springs definitely would have been a forerunner if they were available and if they weren't affected by the flooding earlier this year. But Ponsonby Rugby has had to contend with not being able to play at home all season.
Yep. Wow, it looks like it's going to be a clean sweep because I also think the Rovers are going to go back to back, which is good. So good to see we're all on the same page. They've probably been the best team all year. And then if anyone's around that Auckland area, go and check that game out because there could be some NPC players on show, future NPC players. I know that I think the Lay brothers, Jordan Lay and the other Lay whose name escapes me is
James Lay was playing in that semi-final against. They were playing. He was playing
University, right?
Yep. And I wouldn't be surprised if Marcel Renata is playing for them too, because
Shit, they got front rowers galore then.
yeah. And so,
yeah, I know. In the Rovers, they've got Xavier Tito Harris as well. He's a young fella, but he'll be a future NPC guy as well, part of the New Zealand Sevens team.
New Zealand
And
Sevens
another
Custom
winger
Boys.
as well.
Yeah.
Was he
Yeah,
Kelston?
so he's Custom Boys. Yeah, he was the Custom Boys captain last year.
And he's played for the Rovers.
Like I say, there could be a hand in there through Tana Umanga magic, or the strings that Doug Sampton, the lure that he can attract players with. So there's been an affinity with Moana Pacifica. They've got a strong link there with the Rovers. And there's even Angelo Tutavuku, who played for Moana Pacifica, but is a Liston old boy and a Waitemata old boy, but he's chosen that affiliation and to play with Manukau Rovers as well. So I'm not too sure whether he'll feature in this grand final against, but I wouldn't be surprised. And maybe Nico Costa, who popped up the year before, he was playing for Eden, one of the Costa brothers, the three Costa brothers, but then and then after watching that grand final last year, he was a halfback reserve behind Fred Tavita. He came off the bench, so he got two championships back to back with two different teams, one for Eden in 2021 and then Manukau last year 2022.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, nice.
So that's what I'm saying.
Hey.
He might pop up again.
Yeah, I was just reading this article. I think it was from Dunedin. So Rog, I've got a question for you. How old is your oldest son?
My
How
oldest
old's
son,
your oldest boy? Yeah.
he's 15.
Oh, I just read this article recently about a father and son who played Premiership rugby, and this is in Dunedin. So I was thinking, shucks, Rog, can you hold on a few more years and potentially play with your young one? Or
I know it's been done before at Waitemata. The last father-son that did it, and I don't know how many before them, but Phoenix Nafoa and Dave Nafoa,
yeah,
they played a couple of years ago together when Phoenix reached his 100th game for Waitemata, and Dave Nafoa was sort of getting himself ready through playing reserves, and then once that game came about. But I think they had played Prem's football together prior to that, but it was even made more special for Dave to be able to play in his son's 100th game. And Dave himself, being a centurion for the club, he's played over 150 for Waitemata.
Wow, shit, 150, Dave, eh? Oh, nice, good shout for Dave. All right, boys, we're just about to wrap up now, so we'll get some final thoughts just in closing about anything rugby related or anything you just wanted to share as we close up our podcast, mate. So, Joey, I'll come to you first, mate. Anything you wanted to just share or say just as final thoughts?
Yeah, just good luck to all those involved in finals footy this weekend, and congratulations to Manu Rewa, who won the McNamara Cup,
Yes.
which is a counties competition, and what was, by all accounts, a thrilling final passage of play where they came back in the dying minutes and won by
2 tries in the last 4 minutes or so.
Yeah, 2 tries in the last 4 minutes and won by conversion.
Oh, nice.
From the sideline. So well done to them, and obviously they're probably still celebrating now. So
Areta Tanuai is probably in and among. He was the nutritionist for Manu Rewa last year and this year.
Areta, the other Areta.
Areta, what's his surname? It's not Tanuai. No.
Yeah, that's Thing's brother. That's Bena's brother.
Isera and Bena.
Yeah.
Areta, Rewa hard Areta.
Yeah. Is it Tolava? No, Areta. Yeah, Areta Rewa hard. I know him as Rewa hard.
Rewa hard.
Yeah, so congratulations to Rewa. It's good to see, Rewa rugby up there again. But I'm Paddy Hard. Patu Mahoi Hard. One of the clubs that I've only got a few clubs against, Rogers'
I don't
many,
know.
many, many
I
clubs.
don't know. I'm sure you
But
well
my,
exceed my numbers.
I guess my last bit to add to the podcast episode is, and this is going to sound very offensive to anyone who's ever represented Manukau Rovers. If they won this back-to-back, I would like to put forward a motion for Manukau Rovers to consider changing their name to Mangere Rovers, because Mangere needs a
Oh,
rugby team. And, Manukau Rovers just doesn't really fit, especially since it's in Mangere, the heart of
that's right.
Mangere.
That's
So
right.
consider it, please, all you folks. It's my brothers both played for Manukau Rovers, and they'd probably say the same thing. Mangere Rovers. It was my local club, so I'm supporting the Rovers.
Nice.
And I think on top of that, like I've played in probably a number of seasons in the Auckland competition. Joey, you well know, and to see where Manukau was then to the Manukau that is now, and I remember in the in-betweens was when Frank Bunce was involved. Frank Bunce
Yes.
was involved in bringing, some new talent, or trying to get the local boys on board with coming through instead of going to the, to counties Manukau, which was Manurewa and beyond, down to the Bombays, or going closer to the central Auckland teams, or even the eastern suburbs teams, the likes of Marist, Pakuranga, to name a couple.
Even you were involved at Manukau Rovers.
Even you were involved, Joey.
Even you were involved.
Joey
Mosa.
McAllister.
Mosa.
But it's awesome to see them being a forerunner in the Auckland Club competition, because when they were sort of probably in, like, similar to college rifles, there was two divisions in club rugby in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that's where they featured, was at the bottom. East Tamaki were down there. Otahu were different, because in the early 2000s, Otahu won their second, or their first time since 1982, and then you had the likes of Oreniai, the Melamus involved in that sort of era, as well as the Sika Pochings, Junior Poching, Simon Lemalu. So you had some good players back then, but then, whatever happened to Otahu went through to Papatoetoe, and that helped launch Papatoe's standing in Auckland Club Rugby. But Manukau Rovers have really improved over the years, and I think there's been some influences. The Charlie McAllisters coming through, the Frank Bunces coming through as well as senior statesmen, and hoping to sort of develop the club environment, making it an attractive option for the South Aucklanders to go there, as opposed to going to other clubs that are more established. So it'd be an interesting result if they can get it back to back. Awesome for the club, awesome for their community, but and how to not take it for granted, because who knows when the next time Eden now in the rebuilding phase, because who knows, that was their first ever championship in 2021. Who knows when that's going to happen again. Ponsonby's, the universities who have tasted multiple times the glory, and Joey being a part of that. But I know for one that after 20 something years playing Premier Club Rugby, and I've been involved in one final, missed out on a couple of semi-finals, but I've never won a championship at Prem's level. The only championship I've ever won, the only championship was under 19s with North Harbour Marist back in 1997. So, and I learned early on that, I thought, this could be the one of a few more or many. But now on the back end of it, I know that, they don't come too frequently. So for a team to be able to go back to back, it would be awesome, not only for the players, but for the community as well. And you don't take those moments for granted. Rugby doesn't believe in fairy tales. Richie Moonga made mention of that when they played that semi-final, and it was Rico Ioane's 100 game. Rugby does not believe in fairy tales. How awesome it would be to cap off back-to-back seasons for Manukau. Not for how they've gotten there, but just for the community as a whole, for the player base, for the coaching staff, for the management, and there's a lot of us have personal ties to some of those guys that are involved in that, and we wished him well. Not Nuts, Sully, Dougie Samt, wishing them all the best going forward. But then University have got their own history as well, so they'll be gunning to ruin that party, because again, rugby doesn't believe in fairy tales here. So really important moments that will be in that game and part of the season. Ponza, that all too well. They came real close, agonisingly close, where they lost it to a penalty last year. So it will be moments and it'll be millimetres that'll determine this game. Defence, everything. But Watamata got a little bit of pride at stake as well for the bowl final. But also, 20 years ago, the 2003 team at Watamata Prems, they won the Gala Shield at Eden Park. They had the likes of Rodney Elliott, Leva Saena, the Sengi brothers. The youngest player was Ray Tuveti. You had Matt Tolley, Michael Von Dinklage, Greg Beetham. And so some of these guys came back as a reunion this year to celebrate the feats of 2003. Sadly, the premier team of 2003, the class of 2023, were unable to replicate that. But the reserves have some sort of pride on the line to be able to do that, for what the club means to the local community out of West Auckland. But again, suburbs are flying the flag as well for the best in the West, being part of that Jubilee Cup final against Papatoetoe. So there's a lot at stake, a lot to be proud of. Another season, COVID uninterrupted season. So we're thankful for that. We're thankful for our kids, and a lot of the rugby playing community can get out there and just play a bit of code and enjoy it, not only on television, but also doing it ourselves and rolling around in the mud. But, as my wife says, it's self-inflicted pain. I'm not allowed to wince or sigh about it the next day, but I enjoy it still, and that's why I continue to put it out there each week. At 45, I think I still got another season. How about it, Joey?
And on a Sunday too.
I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway.
Yeah, nice thoughts there, boys.
Nice.
We're just about to wrap up, boys. I just wanted to say, just in closing, I'm glad we've entered the international section of the rugby season, as I found Super Rugby quite boring this year. There are a lot of blowouts, a lot of the games were over by half time, and that really made it a difficult watch when you compare it to, say, the NRL, which was running at the same time. So, but, in saying that, it doesn't get much better than the All Blacks against the Springboks in rugby, and that was a reminder of how good the game can be at the highest level. Also, I will give a shout out to Ian Foster. I know I've just bagged him the whole podcast, but I have high hopes for the All Blacks, and it feels like they have turned a corner. As prior to this, I didn't see them getting past the quarterfinals in the World Cup, but now I think they might be able to progress a little bit further. So, shout out to Foster. It's also good to wrap up the club rugby season, as we've just talked about just now. All the best to you, Rog, for your final. Go the Rovers. And I hope that Auckland Rugby can finally reward, the Rovers players after 2 outstanding seasons, and pick their players in the Auckland NPC team, because they didn't get much of a shout last year, or even give their coach Doug Sanft an opportunity somewhere in the Auckland development teams or something like that. But with all the politics and everything that goes into it, I'm not going to hold my breath for that. That's all for me. I just want to say the Counter Ruck is available through the usual podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many, many more. So keep listening, and don't forget to click the subscribe button. Boys, thanks for being part of the pod again and sharing your rugby knowledge. Joey, Rog, thanks, boys. We'll be back again and do it again soon. Cheers, boys.
Cheers, brother.
Shout out to Mike Clippo for that. We'll be playing against him. He's the second oldest player in rugby.
Are you the oldest? Are you
All the best to Mike Lepo.
All I just say is Mike Lepo is the second oldest.
Nice.